This lesson is formatting JSON and XML input and output. The objectives for this lesson are to find the attributes that control JSON object output format, learn about setting global JSON configuration options such as making properties Pascal case instead of camel case, and ignoring read-only properties. We're then going to take a look at returning XML from action methods and consuming XML as input. .NET contains a number of formatting attributes, and these are attributes that we apply to properties on a C# class to help format the JSON when it gets serialized. JSON ignore means don't include the property in the output at all. JSON property name renames the property in C# to something else when it gets emitted as JSON. We have also JSON property order, in which you place a number, and this allows you to place one property before or after another. The n can be a negative or a positive number, and if this isn't applied, they're all considered the same. They're all numbered 0, which means they just appear in the order in which they appear in the class. Let's take a look at using some of these formatting attributes. Open up the Product.cs file and add a using statement, system.text.json.serialization. This is where these JSON attributes are located. Let's add the JSON ignore before the row GUID. We don't want that to appear in our output. And then let's rename product category ID and product model ID. So we're going to do product category ID to category ID, product model ID to simply model ID. Now what you put here is exactly what's going to be emitted into the JSON. So if you want lowercase, you need to put lowercase here. Then how about we assign the order on the product number to be -1, so that way it'll appear at the very top of the property list. Great, let's go ahead and run this, and let's see what we get. Come down here to the product, try it out, execute. Now if we look down here, you'll see that the product number is the first one listed. Notice it's now category ID and model ID, and the row GUID is completely gone. Now the JSON attributes are for affecting a single class at a time. We can also apply global formatting using some options in the Program.cs. First off, let's go ahead and just remove these. I'm going to comment all of these out. We'll put everything back the way it was. And then let's go to the Program.cs. And what we're looking for now is down here where you see the services.add controllers. What we're going to do now is we're going to add on an additional add JSON options. We're going to chain these two methods together. And the add JSON options, it passes to us an options variable. We can then use options.json serialization options.property naming policy. The default property naming policy is to use camel case. If we null it out, it's going to keep whatever the casing is on that particular C# object. So let's go ahead and try this and run this, and let's see what happens. When we get down here now, let's try this out and execute. And now notice that everything is the exact same way it is in C#. See all the uppercase letters for each property? And then look at row GUID. Row GUID is all lowercase because that's exactly what it is. So if you don't set a naming policy, it's going to leave whatever it is in C# instead of using the camel casing, which will lowercase all of the first letters in the properties. Another option we can set globally is ignore read-only properties. Let's take a look. Let's go back to the product class and let's add another property called isActive, but it's a read-only property because you just see the get there, not the set. Now back in Program.cs, let's add another option that we can set here. Options.json serializer options.ignore read-only properties equals true. The default is, of course, false. In fact, let's do this first. Let's go ahead and not put that in. Let's run this. Let's come down here and execute, and now we're going to see the isActive property, all set to false, of course, for each record, but we see the property. But now let's go ahead and uncomment this and run this again. Once again, let's try this one out. Execute this. And now, look at that. It's completely gone. So we have some things that we can do on each individual class. We have some things that we can set globally. Now, every now and then, sometimes you might be dealing with somebody who needs XML. So if that's the case, we can set this up so that we can add an XML serializer. Let's take a look. The first thing we're going to do is, again, chained on to the add controllers. We're saying let's add XML serializer formatters. Now, by itself, this doesn't do anything. You have to add one additional thing on your controllers. So if you go into the product controller and you go to the get method here, you have to add a produces attribute and you specify application/XML. This tells the serializer which one to use. By default, it's going to use application/JSON. So let's go ahead and run this. Come down here. And now, first off, before I even run it, look at this. Look at the 404. See, it actually says that it's going to bring this back as XML. And it can't generate anything right now because there's no root element defined, but that's something that you could do. But let's go ahead and try this out. And now, look at this. Now we have this data coming back now as XML as opposed to JSON. We haven't covered posting data yet, but you get the idea. It means that we're going to do an insert. We're going to send in a product object that we then want to insert into a database or something. So we can actually consume XML in our post method. Let's take a look. So the first thing we're going to do in our product controller is let's come down here to the bottom and we'll add now an HTTP post. So the other one is get. We're getting data. Now we're posting data. Right? We're going to say, hey, you know what? What's going to come in now is some XML. But first off, before we do this, let's go ahead and just run this. And now down here, you can see the post. But I want you to take a look. See what it's expecting here? It's expecting JSON. So that's right. We still need to tell it what else we're going to do because the default is JSON. Well, what we have to do is add to this post consumes application XML and produces application XML. Let's go ahead and run this. Come down here to the post. Now you can see that the request is application XML. And it's even telling you this right here, see? And it's going to expect to get application/XML back as well. We'll post to this later, but you get the idea of changing this around by using the consumes and the produces attributes. ASP.NET is very flexible and they allow you to create your own custom formatters as well. So you could create a class and inherit from the JSON naming policy class. You would then override the convert name method and then you return the property name however you want. And there are also XML custom formatters as well. In this lesson, we talked about attributes to help us format JSON objects, overriding global JSON settings, consuming and returning XML. Coming up next, call web APIs from the client side and set up cores.